Hello and welcome to our channel, Marstream, your public performance broadcast platform. Please make sure to like this video and subscribe to our channel. You can also donate to our tip jar and support the arts and artist of Marstream by clicking the link below in the description. Check out our website, themarsh.org, for all upcoming live performances. Now, enjoy the show.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Gail Shickele, and thank you for joining us for a special Solo Arts Heal Climate Edition honoring Earth Day, featuring the outstanding trio TriumPhatrix, who will join us shortly with excerpts from their show, Astronautica, Voices of Women in Space. Solo Arts Heal Climate Edition is a monthly feature of our weekly show, Solo Arts Heal, where we showcase artists whose shows evince the healing power of the arts through terrific storytelling as survivors and caregivers across a variety of physical, mental, and emotional challenges. Now we're in our second year on the Marstream, thanks to one of the artists, Marsh Artistic Director Stephanie Weissman. And along the way, we've discovered that our audience is in every community because we all face life challenges and we all need resources. And what better way than through great performance? Here each week, we present performance and informants on a broad variety of health and wellness related issues, including environmental and social justice challenges as we all work together to create a better world. I've worked with various environmental groups over the years. One of them is Al Gore's Climate Reality Project, who reminded us today that on the very first Earth Day, 20 million people took to the streets to fight for our environment. And while the world looks very different than it did 51 years ago, the mission of Earth Day remains the same and is more urgent than ever. We need to demand widespread action to protect our planet. I can't think of a more artistically beautiful way to drive that message home than to celebrate Earth Day with trio TriumPhatrix. The excerpts from Astronautica, Voices of Women in Space, is a newly commissioned work of music, voice, and video by women composers and a libretto drawn from the words of the women who have traveled in outer space and seen our world from a dramatic new perspective. Astronautica is an artistic evocation of the transformation that happens when one sees our small planet set against the endless blackness of space, without borders, without artificial boundaries that divide and could well destroy humankind. Performed by the women of trio TriumPhatrix, Lindsey, Kesselman, Hai-Ting, Chinn, and Kirsten Solik, and featuring the work of 9 women composers. Tonight, we're going to see 3 excerpts of the show with a talk back between segments when our audience is encouraged to post comments and ask questions via the chat. We'll be meeting our guests right after our first segment, which is called The First View. It lasts about 6 minutes, and it's with music by Kamala Sankaram and lyrics by astronaut Kalpana Chawla. Kristen, if you play our first piece called The First View.
It's a very special feeling, a dome over dark sky and stars everywhere, and the earth last time covered with thunderstorms here and there with some small sprays of lightning, and every once in a while city lights peek through the clouds. And it is very much like a storybook.
Just a bluish hue, you see all the colors when the
belongs to all of us.
Indeed, it belongs to all of us. Wow, what stunning, amazing footage and beautiful, beautiful music. I'd like to bring in now our guests and welcome the trio to the Zoom room. So let me begin with introducing mezzo-soprano Hai-Ting Chinn, who performs in a wide range of styles and venues. Hi, Hai-Ting. Performed all over the world with New York City Opera, the Wooster Group, Philip Glass, Robert Wilson Opera Omnia. And also Hai-Ting created and lover of new music and a big lover of science. So you performed Science Fair and created and performed Science Fair, an opera with experiments, a stage show of science set to music that was featured here earlier this year as a solo spotlight performance. So welcome. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having us.
And we have soprano Lindsey Kesselman, hailed by Fanfare magazine as an artist of growing reputation for her artistry and intelligence with a voice of goddess-like splendor. Lindsey is a resident soprano of the Pittsburgh New Music Ensemble, has been for 8 seasons. And I know, Lindsey, you passionately advocate for contemporary music as well. Welcome.
Yes. Thank you so much for having us. It's a beautiful thing to be involved in the creation of new art.
Oh, it is wonderful to have you here. Thank you. And we have contralto Kirsten Solik, called an appealingly rich alto by the New York Times. And she's featured with orchestras, operas, and music festivals worldwide. And over the past decade has worked extensively with composer John Zorn, premiering his music in New York, Milan, and Paris. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. It's great to have all 3 of you here. So tell us first about the show. That there's so much going on here, that performed by women and featuring the women of 9 composers. What was the inspiration initially to have you put this together? Maybe Hai-Ting, that would be starting with you.
This was inspired by hearing some things that astronauts were saying about looking back on Earth, looking down on Earth, although down is not even the right term once you get up there away from gravity, looking at Earth from outside, which is a perspective that so few of us, so few members of humanity have had. And I was listening to, as you mentioned, I'm kind of a science buff, and I was listening to some podcasts where astronauts were talking about the amazing views and the amazing shift in perspective and all the work that they're doing in space, which a lot of which is just to try to help us live better here on Earth. And I thought that a lot of it was very kind of poetically inspiring, despite the fact that it's scientific or environmental or just kind of workaday talk for them. And I really wanted to hear it as music. And since I already have a history of getting composers to set scientific texts to music, I thought I should continue that. And I had this amazing trio of women who, these 2 others who had miraculously agreed to sing with me on some of this crazy stuff. And also we've known each other and worked together for years and years. So I thought it would be great with 3 of us singing. And that's where the idea was born.
Wonderful. You said the 3 of you were working on another piece when you came up with your name for your trio.
Oh, Kirsten, I don't know if you remember this. We were singing Handel's Judita Triumphans.
Yes.
And we were sitting in the back row as usual, giggling over some of the Latin in the libretto. This is the biblical story of Judith, who triumphs over her enemies by cutting off the head of a king who's been oppressing her or something like this. I can't remember exactly the biblical story. Do you remember it?
No, but it just sounds like the usual.
I was going to say,
But
oh, that familiar story.
it's like sort of the precursor to Salome in a lot of ways, like the older Testament, the older Old Testament Salome. Anyway, the final chorus had this word TriumPhatrix in it, and we were just sitting in the back row giggling about this word, and we had kind of just formed the trio, and I was like, that should be the name of our trio. And then it kind of stuck. It means women who are triumphant, TriumPhatrix.
Well, it's perfect for this show. You know, the show offers such a stunning view of the world from such a unique perspective, and also from seeing the perspective of women and including all women. Why why did you choose just to do that from a woman's perspective?
Because because I mean, because we are women, and because we hear so much more from men in the sciences, and we have this tendency to revere the words of famous men in this way, and to quote them, and to lionize them, canonize them. And there was so much rich material that even just narrowing it down to women, there was more than enough for 7 shows of this. So why not? And one of the things that a lot of the women say that I think rings true to our experience as women in any profession is, we're just doing our jobs. Would you stop asking us what it's like to be women doing it? We're just doing it like everybody else.
And please pay us the same as you pay.
Well, that is one thing that NASA does do. They pay all the astronauts the same.
Oh, lovely. That's good. Well, it also, you know, women, we traditionally have been the caretakers, and we refer to our Mother Earth, and you know, and the lifeline of humanity is inextricably connected to, you know, the health of our planet, and so it just is so perfectly fitting, I think, as we celebrate Earth Day and talk about these things. So, and also, I wanted to bring up that Astronautica, you originally were going to premiere this not as a Zoom performance, but a live performance last year in May of 2020, was it? And you do plan on doing that again once we are able to be live again.
Yeah, we were so grateful that Voices of Ascension, who helped us bring this project to life and really hosted the whole thing and really helped us find those live venues, also then pivoted so beautifully and so flexibly, and were open to the idea of just transforming this project in new ways. So what was going to become this live performance in different venues in New York then really took on a different life. And I think, as opposed to just a sort of B+ reproduction of a live performance, that's not what this became. This really took on a different personality, and we thought about the ways that we could use technology to maybe even break down more barriers and get closer to our audience and make it a more visceral and multi-artistic, diverse experience. So the video became just even more important. And the fact that we're right up close and everybody has a front row seat, you know, makes this a really special experience, we think. So this became something that we're really proud of in its current format, in addition to what we think is going to be a really vibrant live performance life for this piece. So it just goes to show there is always a silver lining to be found, you know, and we were lucky to find it here and have the support to do that and just reimagine things outside of the realm of what we originally thought would be possible.
Which will certainly inform any future live performances that we do of this. I think that it will be a big influence on how we choose to present this in a live format going forward.
Being being inspired or influenced through having a virtual performance?
Especially in the way that it presented itself and the way that Hai-Ting sort of made this amazing creation. It's not what it was originally intended to be, and so it's going to turn into something unpredictable, I think, in a great way.
That's beautiful. That's wonderful. Yes, it's interesting to see. The adaptation is just stunning. Now, this first piece that we saw, it's just so beautiful. The Earthrise, that first image that was seen when the first guys went into space, and that was the famous Earthrise view that we're seeing again. And then to see the pollution and the fires. Was that the one that was that Australia that was completely on fire? It might have been.
That was Australia. Yeah. Oh, this is actually really a great story about the fire footage. I made that video was the very first one that we made, and it was really a proof of concept. You can see that we're actually all in our own little boxes. We recorded those videos and our parts to the song in our own houses in quarantine, in isolation with a click track. And then our amazing sound engineer stitched it all together, and then I stitched all our videos into it. And I put in this was in May. This was around May 2020 that I made that first video. And those fires in Australia had been the big fires that year. And then by the time we got all the rest of the videos done, which we ended up doing in another way, we got together safely. We had ourselves tested, and then just the three of us and our potted partners got together, and between the six of us, we did all the work of doing the videography, the sound recording, and the setup and takedown of all we did green screen video, and we did lip syncing, and we did everything, just the six of us. And then I took all the footage away and made the rest of the videos. And by the time I had made all those videos around December of 2020, there was a new fire season that had been seen from space in California. So I put in all new fire footage because it was so much more dramatic than the previous season.
Yes, and in the last couple of seasons, we lost areas about the size of Manhattan here in California. Really, really horrible. And in Australia, I know just from talks that I've given and learned about, in Australia, it was so bad, and they were not very up to par as a country on climate change. And so the firefighters and other volunteers did a 3,000-mile relay across the country to spread the word, about climate change and giving people, ideas and things that they can do and changes that need to be made to make sure, because that was, as devastating as any of the fires that we've certainly experienced as for the country. So, there's nothing like actually seeing it. And as you point out, seeing it from space is a whole different perspective. Yeah. Would you like to set up the second piece and tell us about that, and we can take a look at the next piece?
Lindsey, the next piece is Jen Jolly's. Do you want to set that up?
Sure. This is called Her Speed Left the Winds Behind. And it's just a really beautiful piece. People who have heard this so far liken it to early Renaissance music for three treble voices. And she's just a really gifted and beautiful human being. And, we've been so fortunate to work with all 9 of these composers, and they are such different, varied styles and voices within contemporary music. So Jen is a wonderful human being. She teaches on faculty at Texas Tech University, and has written for a real variety of forces. So we were just really fortunate that she decided to jump onto this project with us. But I think the music speaks for itself. I think we should listen, but I think you'll absorb it on first hearing. You know, people never know what to expect of new music, but we think a lot of the music in this piece is really readily available and accessible on first hearing, despite the fact that the voices are so different from one another.
And I think that's good. You can stop motion. Okay, motion stopped. You're going to pull the inverse thing out.
Robotic arm operator continues to move Heidi's definition piper away from the...
Heidi, we're ramping out. Okay.
This is pretty cool to be out here.
just to see that thin line of our atmosphere, to think that, all of that is what we need to protect, and what we need to stop the carbon, and protect that thin blue line around the earth.
It's a fragile safety.
You mentioned that the composer for this was Jennifer Jolly, is it? Mm-hmm. I wanted to mention the other composers of the 9, although I don't know if I'll say all the names right. Renee Pavonsi and Elaine Lashika, is it? And Gilda Lyons, Rashonda Reeves. Gilda Lyons, thank you. Rashonda Reeves, Kamala Sankaram, and Jane Sheldon, Bora Yoon, and Hai-Ting Chinn. Wonderful. Any comments that you wanted to make on this piece specifically? Kirsten, want to start with you?
I think it's really spectacular. Something that ran through sort of all of the pieces is that, we all sort of have different acquaintances and levels of connection to different composers. And so some of them we know and some of them we didn't. Jen Jolly, I had never met her before, never encountered her. I don't know that she knew I existed before this. And also with Renee's piece coming up, Renee's a good friend of Hai-Ting's and has never met me, but somehow they magically created a part that felt so comfortable for me to sing, but that I think also juxtaposed our 3 voices in a really successful way. So, we have these 3 different sounds, sort of sound worlds that each of our voices make naturally, and they just instinctively somehow got it and found ways to write that were not only beautiful to listen to, but felt good to sing, which is not always a concurrent event. So I was super grateful for that. And I thought that, I remember so many moments of when we were first seeing the pieces as they were coming in. And I remember sitting at my piano at home and, that's us. That's our planet. That's home. I think the first time I finished reading through that song for the first time, I think I pretty much fell apart on my piano and then texted Hai-Ting and Lindsey and said, okay, I'm a mess. It was so beautiful, but it was also so relevant to many things that were happening to us at that time, and of course the pandemic frames all of this. So the way that we've looked at this and looked at the perspectives of these astronauts, one of the things I was thinking about was that there was a moment, maybe as late as May or June in 2020, when some astronauts who had been away for a year came home to the pandemic, like they had been gone. And they came home and suddenly it was like this. And they were uniquely suited to isolation and self-quarantine in a way that the rest of us were thrashing against wildly. But they had had all of this experience with, dealing with the sort of psychological rigors of being alone for a year. They had been in space for a year. And so it was quite powerful to hear about that.
Yes, I would think that would be amazing. Can you imagine being up there for a year?
No, can you imagine what we've been for the last year? We've been down here for a year.
You brought up something about in New York. Tell us about that with the video film.
Yeah, it was a study that NYU initiated, and it involved recording the sounds of cities over, actually, I think I looked it up and the article was written in May of last year and it was dated 3 years before. So they were doing this sort of auditory study of various iconic places around the world. And so one of them was near New York University on Lafayette and 4th Street. And they had a microphone set up sort of, I think, at the first story level, just recording the sounds of the city and taxis and people yelling at each other and, that kind of thing. And there were similar ones in the Piazza di San Marco in Venice. There was outside the Tate Modern in London. And what they did was recorded the sounds in, some month of 2019, and then basically fast forwarded to the same month of 2020 to hear what those areas sounded like in the pandemic lockdown. And, it went from sirens and ice cream trucks to birdsong, and the complete lack of human voices. And on the one hand, it was kind of beautiful, but it was also haunting and sad, and you missed that sort of hustle and bustle of what we're used to.
Right, indeed. I think we've all noticed that, the birds, it's like there's more birds. No, we can just hear them.
Yeah.
There were some similar...
Oh, sorry.
Oh, I was just going to mention, since a lot of the audience is in the Pacific Northwest, that there was a similar thing done with underwater microphones in the shipping lanes. And they not only heard that it was much quieter, but that the whales became less stressed as the shipping noise was lowered, because they have to use sound to communicate, and they were having trouble communicating over the shipping traffic. And when the noise was lowered, the whales calmed down.
Wow, yeah. That's incredible. God, it's kind of heartbreaking too, to think of how, they suffer and things suffer. We have the power to make the changes, and we will. I want to, there's more to talk about. We have another segment to see. Time goes by so quickly. I want to take a moment to remind the audience that there's posted in the chat a link to the tip jar. Your tax-deductible support is indeed needed and much appreciated to keep the Marsh Stream platform open to our communities during this time of isolation and theater closure. And we do encourage your comments and questions. And if I don't read all the comments, they will get to the performers. So, but I'll do what I can. And I do have a question here. How do you make a pitch like that to a composer? Do you provide the words only or suggest styles? What kind of leeway do they have?
In this case, I did most of that initial work. I gathered piles and piles of interviews with astronauts, either from historical transcripts and oral histories. I transcribed videos. I listened to podcasts. I read some things that astronauts had written. I read newspaper interviews, and I looked for things that I felt would make good lyrics. So interesting talking doesn't always seem like it's going to make good lyrics, but I like to pick out things that sound musical already in some way. And so I just made a huge document of words by many of the women astronauts at NASA. And then as we talked together and chose a set of composers that we wanted to commission, I would send out packets of texts that I thought would go well with the musical styles of the different composers. And then they could choose from that subset what they wanted to set, and whether they wanted to set one astronaut or a mishmash of many. Some of them are used to making their own librettos out of collages of smaller utterances. So some of them did that. Some of them came back to me and said, I like this text, but it's too long. Could you turn it into lyrics? I did that for some of them. Some of them were already really into space and astronauts and had their own ideas about what they wanted to set. So it really depended on the specific individual. And no, I make no suggestions about what kind of style. We chose women who are used to making their own musical decisions. We chose them as people who knew how to write for voice, so we knew that we were going to get competent writing for us, and then we let them speak in their own musical voices.
And there is a certain leap of faith quality to that when building a whole show and not knowing that what the arc of it will look like by the end. And not surprisingly, I think we ended up with a lot of pieces that really dove deep into the the substance and the kind of awe and mystery of humans' experience with space. But what that also meant is we had a lot of slow music. So we were very fortunate that Hai-Ting decided to contribute her composer talents to this project too. And as a result, we have two really funny, sort of tension-breaking pieces from her that just really helped make the whole thing into a compelling arc that would go to all of those deep, important, substantive places, and would also give us a break and give us some humor throughout, which was really, really important. So one of them, Orbital Outhouse, is all about how you deal with things like that up in space, which is always fascinating to people. Everyone wants to know about that.
This is a good time. I saw the premiere of this in January, and then the recent watch party that you had. And I just recommend to everybody, don't miss it. And it's a good time to announce that this Astronautica is going to be the spotlight performance on the Mars stream on May 15th and 16th. So you can be sure to catch that. Also, I want to make a note that Phyllis says in the chat, you all did a fabulous job of creating something special, which we all agree, and that NASA did not always treat genders and colors alike, and that fires have already started in California. Maybe a terrible fire season. I can't hardly believe that that could be true at this time of year. It's so absolutely, upsetting to even think about. Time is flying by, and we have one more piece. And so if you would introduce that, I think we should move forward and see that piece, if we may. Who would like to introduce that? Let's see, our last one is We Need Earth. We Need Earth.
I think it kind of speaks for itself.
So here's where we are in the world today. Right now, we're in a world where we have too much of almost everything, and it's creating pollution. We are in a world where we actually have enough food to feed everyone, yet we waste it rather than feeding people around the world. We're in a world where we have we could share energy in so many ways. We could generate energy in so many ways, yet we choose not to, and we choose to use those forms of energy to super cool homes in some places and leave vaccines unrefrigerated in others. And all of these have to do with how we come up with solutions. So when we look at research, when we look at science and technology, engineering and mathematics, when we look at those research fields, people get to choose what they research. They get to choose what technologies they create and develop. All of those are influenced by who you are, your perspective on the world. And so when you have people who have many different perspectives, it makes a difference. So what we need to do is to make sure that we encourage and keep girls going into the fields, people of color going into the fields, and that we respect and use that information that they can bring, the perspectives. It's not just because once you solve an equation, you come up with the same answer, but what were you trying to solve for? Right? What was it that you were seeing in the world that you were now trying to write an equation to represent? Let's say we could figure out how to get to Mars. How many people could we get to Mars? Say we have 500, 1,000 people to Mars. Who gets to choose? Whose music, whose ideas, whose genetic pool goes? And do we actually think that we could harness all the things that we need to do and go to another planet and set up another world there? If we had that technology, we would use it on ourselves and destroy ourselves first unless we come to a better understanding.
I do not believe space is a plan B. I do not believe space is a plan B. We get very cavalier about it, but this planet is not ours. We get very cavalier about it, but this planet is part of us. We could not survive accept and realize. We have to accept that we have to accept that we have to accept its realize that we all of its past. The reality is this planet is reality. The reality is this planet is our home. So we have to figure things out. So we have to figure things out. So we figure things out. So we have to figure things out. When I was in space, I recognized as I looked down, the planet is gorgeous. It iridesces from its iridesces from the planet is good, it is good.
Beautiful. And that is so incredibly moving. I just want to weep when I see this footage from the beauty, and also when you see the devastation of the planet. It's such incredible music and footage. I thank you all so much for being here with us. I think we all need to work together, and there's hope, and we have good things happening with a new administration that is working to reverse the harmful rollbacks of environmental standards that protect our air and water and communities, and a Green New Deal and the Paris Climate Agreement. And I think the Biden administration is looking at having of course, it's never quick enough, but a net zero economy by 2050 and a pollution-free power sector by 2035. But we all need to try to work as best we can. And certainly the three of you have done your job. This is such a beautiful piece, and I just want everybody to see it in the world. It needs to be widely distributed and widely seen. So
we so appreciate your bringing us on and sharing it. It means a great deal to us too.
Oh, wonderful. Well, we look forward to seeing it again. Hai-Ting will be on Stephanie's Marsh stream on May 13th, and then the spotlight performance will be the weekend of May 14th and 15th. So, or 15th and 16th, I think that is that weekend. And I just want to say a very special thank you to Hai-Ting Chinn, Lindsey Kesselman, and Kirsten Solik for tonight's inspiring evening about climate change as seen through the artistic lens of Astronautica, the voices of women in space. And you